Hello, hope you're doing well. Boy, do I have a story for you today. So grab something to drink, make yourself comfortable, and let's dive in. This is my worst experience with an Airbnb host. And I think this exemplifies the fun, let's see here, the crazy things that can take place when you're open to new experiences and attempting to be sensitive to other people's way of living. I think what this story really captures for me is just how incredible it is how differently we function as human beings. Like, I do not understand what the rationale of my Airbnb host was in this story. All right, let me paint the picture for you. So it's right around the beginning of December of 2021. I've just left France and just arrived to Mexico City. I'm fleeing the cold weather. I'm needing a change in environment. I'm processing a lot of stuff. I'm going through a little bit of a difficult period. I'm very seasonally affected, so I wanted to go somewhere warm. And Mexico City, as many of you know, if you've been following along for a while, I used to live there and just had an amazing experience there. And there's something about that place that is very inspiring for me, very stimulating in a very positive way. I don't always do this. I often will get Airbnbs on my own, but that can be a little bit lonely, and I figured, why not? Let's give this a shot. I will rent a room from somebody's place, and that'll be an opportunity to get to know someone, a local. And again, I was feeling a little bit lonely at this point in time, so I was wanting to surround myself with people. I have some friends over there as well, so why not? So I find this Airbnb that's actually really cool. And honestly, getting there, it was even cooler than it looked in the photos. It's way high up on this skyscraper. Mexico City has a lot of skyscrapers. I never would have spent the money that would have been necessary to get that Airbnb on my own, but because I was just renting a room, it was much more affordable. It had these giant windows, so a tremendous amount of light would enter. So much light, actually, that it would get really hot in the apartment. The mission of this trip was to do a lot of self-care activities, things that I just enjoyed doing. And so I found a place to take salsa classes actually right nearby. And I started going every day. And every Friday, the group would go out dancing, like in a real salsa dancing spot. And it wouldn't be class anymore. It would be like, okay, you've got to apply the skills that you learned in class now in the real world. This is good for me because dancing on the dance floor, asking a woman and then leading her in salsa, something happens in my brain where I forget like 90% of the moves that I know out of just fear, honestly, just blanking completely. And it's good for me to practice that because I want to be a monster on the dance floor. You know what I mean? I want to be the guy that people are like looking at and pointing to, like, damn, he's smooth. Not there yet, but I'll get there. A couple of weeks into my time there, I have enough confidence to go out on one of these evenings to dance with all the people from my class. And, I brought it up to my Airbnb host, who I've been sort of interacting with, like a few moments here and there in the morning or in the afternoon. We'd have a lot of little interactions. And during one of those little interactions, I invited him to join me on this outing. And he's down. Here's a little description to imagine this guy in your mind's eye. He was on the shorter side, late 30s, receding hairline, and had a rounder face. I would later discover that he worked for an oil company. So we all go out, we have a great time, a lot of dancing, a lot of talking, and after a few hours, it feels like he's kind of ready to go, and he offers me a ride back, the advantage of living in the same spot, right? So I'm like, yeah, let's do it. So we leave. We actually have a few tacos on the way back to the car, and then it's pretty late now. It's got to be probably midnight at this point. It's funny. I remember this specific detail that set the tone for that evening, what was about to come. Basically, we were driving and there was a red light and there were cops fucking right there, just sitting there in the intersection. They were pulled over. They were like a couple 100 feet away, really close. And my Airbnb host just rolls straight through the red. And I look over to him and I'm like, dude, what are you doing? That was a red and there are cops right there. And he's like, está bien, güey. Like he's giving me it's all good in Mexican Spanish. Don't worry about it. We're in a nice neighborhood. I'm like, okay. This is the part of me that isn't Latin, because I know this stuff happens a lot in Argentina as well. I feel like you'd never get away with something like this in the United States or in France for that matter. So I was like, okay, we're not that far from getting back to the Airbnb when my Airbnb host kind of slows down in the street in front of what looks like a bar, I guess. He rolls down the window. A guy comes out. They have this quick little interaction, and then he just immediately pulls over. And I'm like, "What's going on? I thought we were going home." And he's like, come on, let's go inside and let's get a beer." And I'm like, "Okay, all right." When I'm in a foreign country, when I'm traveling, I'm almost always in this yes mode. I'll just say yes to things. That's my default, because why not? I'm here for an adventure. I'm here to have new experiences. I'm here to see where the wind takes me. So he parks the car in front of this bar. We get out and we walk into this place. And I mean, I've never walked into a place like this. It's very large. There's multiple levels inside. And I feel like I can't even see the ends of this bar. Like there's shadows in which like hallways will lead towards. And I don't know. It felt kind of like a large house. I gotta say, the whole thing felt like I was in a movie. I mean, because everything was so Mexican. I was the only non-Mexican there. And the music that they're playing, so Mexican. One of the first things I noticed is that all the people that work there are hot young women who are scantily dressed. My Airbnb host had interacted with an old guy outside, but that old guy had disappeared. And now, come to think of it, it seemed like he already knew that guy. Like he had been here before. Anyway, we're walking in. All of a sudden, there's a bunch of these young women. And also, there were like TV screens playing every kind of different sport all over the place. So it's very strange. And immediately I got the sense that this was like a place for dudes. So we're standing there, and one of the girls is about to lead us to one of the tables. And I'm just paying attention to the kind of people that are there besides those young women. And it's like these older Mexican dudes. So we follow one of the girls up some stairs and onto the second floor where there's it's like a balcony almost. We can view a lot of other parts of this bar space. And I realized that I feel kind of funny. I feel weird, and I don't really understand why. Again, I've never been in a place like this before. There was just a strange vibe. I guess I wasn't prepared to be in a place like this. I'd kind of psychologically prepared to be going home and to sleep. So we sit down, and I'm looking over the balcony, and I see one of these older dudes. It seems like he's requesting one of the waitresses, like he's picking one of them. And then I see them start to dance together, like down on the first floor. And I was like, what the fuck? They're dancing? What is this place? Because my Airbnb host all this time, he's like, let's just get a beer. We're just getting a beer. So I'm naively still in that mindset of like, we're just getting a beer. And then my Airbnb host is doing sort of the same thing. He's trying to tell one of the waitresses that he wants one of the other women to come over. I don't know. I felt a little bit uncomfortable. I could tell this was not a typical bar at this point, but I didn't really know what to do about it. And strangely, the thing I was most worried about was being disrespectful to my Airbnb host. I was like, shit, he invited me to be here. I try really hard to be culturally sensitive wherever I go. And if a local is asking you to do something, not always, but very, very often, I try to make an effort to respect that wish. But I'm like, why are we picking a specific waitress to come over? And I'm looking over the balcony and seeing this old guy dancing with this young woman. And by the way they're dressed, they're kind of like playboys. Not like a bunny outfit necessarily, but it's like black and sparkly. So after a few minutes, a couple of girls come over and they're talking to me and my Airbnb host, a couple of women that work at this place. And I remember the girl asking me my name and then complimenting my name. Oh, that's so cute. And she asked me what I do, and I'm trying to explain to her. But I'm feeling increasingly uncomfortable. I feel intensely uncomfortable because this is like such a bizarre interaction. I mean, I've never had this before where a woman will come over to me in this kind of setting and be this goddamn interested, right? I remember the intense scent of perfume that this girl had as she was leaning over, and she seemed like a genuinely sweet person who was really playing up any sort of interest, if that makes sense. And there's something about that makes me really shy. Like all of a sudden I was taken aback and I felt very socially awkward. I mean, there are other imbalances that I think had an impact subconsciously on me, right? Like I'm wearing a lot more clothing than she is, for example. That made me feel really weird. And my Airbnb host, like in the moments where we have a chance to interact, like before these women came over, he's like, relax, because he's sort of picking up on the fact that I'm feeling super uncomfortable. Relax, this is fun. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, dude, this isn't fun. Like, what are we doing here? What is this? And I'm seeing people kind of come and go, show up and disappear from my vantage point in the balcony. And I'm seeing my Airbnb host too, who's like in his late 30s, getting increasingly flirtatious with the girl he's talking to. And I'm like, all right, I don't want to be here. This is so not what I want to be doing right now. I don't like how this makes me feel. I hung around long enough to drink my beer, which was way overpriced, by the way. And I was like, listen, man, I'm gonna walk home, because we were not far from where that Airbnb was. And my host is basically like, come on, man, hey, stay here. And I'm like, no. I think one of the final straws for me was that talking to the girls that had come over to our table, I started flipping it on them and asking them questions like, how old are you? What do you do? And they were like these young students in their early 20s. And it was like, I don't like what I'm seeing here. The age gap in front of me, my Airbnb host with the girl he's talking to, the age gap I'm seeing down on the first floor. I mean, look, people can do what they want, but I don't have to be there. I was out of there. Now, I don't know what that was exactly. It took a lot of time for me to process. I mean, this shows you how naive I am on this kind of thing. Because, I had never done anything like this before. Clearly, some kind of escort something was going on there. My impression was that these men were making requests of these women, and that, there seemed to be some kind of price for different kinds of requests. So I don't know where they draw the line exactly. I had to look this up, but brothels are legal in Mexico. It's not illegal. As far as I am aware, I was not in an illegal place. But that doesn't change the fact that it made me insanely uncomfortable, and I don't know. I'm not into that kind of thing. If those were sex workers, I've heard a lot of arguments for that being legal and that being a better alternative than it being illegal, because that's more dangerous for the women. So that's all good and well. And I don't want to judge all of the people that were there. I suppose if you are a law-abiding adult, you can do whatever you want. But I just didn't feel okay with any of it. There's something that for me is repulsed by anything that feels inauthentic. If you're talking to me and it feels like your motives aren't great, like you're not actually interested in talking to me, and I pick up on that, there's nothing that I want to do more than to stop talking to you and run in the opposite direction. This actually is one of the reasons why dating, completely separate from the story, just for a second here, has been very difficult, because I cannot fake interest. If I'm not interested, I can't fake it. I cannot play along. I can't just have fun. Either I'm interested or I'm not. This was one of those cases, though, where you realize how you feel about something as you're living it. I don't think I would have been able to accurately respond to you if you asked me, how would you behave in this particular situation? I really just had to kind of follow my gut, and being there, my gut told me, this isn't good, this isn't for you. But also what's insane to me is the fact that my Airbnb host didn't ask me. I don't know if he was just trying to be cool, if he just kind of assumed all guys like this sort of thing. I don't know. But that is a giant assumption. It was stunning to me that he just assumed that this would be a fun, cool thing. And again, it's difficult to know what the right reaction is exactly, because I don't fully understand what was going on there, if that makes sense. I don't know where they draw their lines, like what services these women were willing to do and not do. But based on the way they were dressed and the way they were talking to us and the way that these Mexican men were kind of interacting with them in that place, it's all pointing in a particular direction, if that makes sense. And despite all of the things that I said here, I don't want to look down necessarily on the people doing this sort of thing. I recognize that this is a reality for a lot of people. So, all the things that I'm sharing are my own opinions, my own beliefs, my own perspective. I'm very glad that this happened because I think it's good to step out of your bubble sometimes, if that makes sense. I don't want to have such a naive perspective on the world, and I recognize that this is some people's realities. Something about that experience really intensified my feelings of loneliness. I don't know, something about the transactional nature of a place like that really it made me feel weird. So I'm glad I witnessed it, but at the same time, I didn't want to have all the details. My Airbnb host stayed when I left, and the next day I didn't ask him what happened or what he did. I don't know what time he got back. I guess there's one more thing that really struck me, which was the internal dialogue that I had that was preventing me from leaving immediately, if that makes sense. Part of it was, I just want to see where this goes. I want to be respectful. I want to assess fully before I make a decision. But part of it was also like, I'm going to be seen as a loser, or I'm going to seem not cool by walking away from this. Like, as a dude, you're supposed to be into this kind of dynamic. I'm just not. I just don't like that kind of thing. I mean, the girl who was talking to me could pick up on how uncomfortable I was, and she was trying to be playful with that and whatnot, but I was like just shutting down. Like, I can't do it. Heterosexual dynamics between men and women is such a delicate and nuanced topic. And nowhere was that more apparent to me than in that weird bar, escort, whatever place that was. So now I want to just flip this on you and ask you, like, what do you think was going on here? What kind of place do you think this was exactly? What do you think of my reaction? Do you think I handled this appropriately? Should I have left earlier? Should I have stuck around longer? What do you think you would have done in my place? Not to mention that I still had several more days staying at this guy's place. And I'm not gonna lie, after having had this experience, it sort of changed the complexion of things. Anyway, that is my story time for the day. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll catch you in the next one. If you enjoy this podcast and want to support my work, consider checking out Cœur Clothing. It's my personal brand of clothes. I'll leave a link in the description. Thank you so much.